Regular meeting, the ARB, August 18th, 2022. Could I have the roll call, Medina?
Yes. Chair Hirsch,
Yes.
Vice Chair Baltai,
Present.
Board Member Thompson,
Present.
Board Member Chen,
Present.
Board Member Rosenberg.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, let me first read resolution. Pursuant to AB 361, this meeting will be held with the option to attend by teleconference or in person. Members of the public may provide live public comments by submitting a speaker card prior to the start of the public comment on that item. Speakers may address the items that are not on the agenda during oral communications portion of the meeting. Spoken comments via computer or smartphone will be accepted through the Zoom app. To address the board, go to zoom.us/join. Meeting number ID is 966-6189-1491. When you wish to speak, click on raised hand. To offer comments using a regular phone, call 1-669-900-6833 and enter meeting ID 965-6189-1491. When you wish to speak on an agenda item, hit 9 on your phone so we know that you wish to speak. Okay. So that's next is oral communications.
I think
Is
the
there-
next item is the resolution.
Wasn't that the resolution?
I think we have to vote.
Oh, we have to take a vote on that. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, so once a month, we need to
Once a month.
confirm that we're still going to do the hybrid meetings.
Yes, and we are continuing. Okay, so
Yeah,
let's
so we
take a
just-
vote on the resolution then.
I'll move to approve the resolution.
I'll second.
I'd like to address my motion, please. Ozma and I are learning to dance. I can only support this resolution as long as it's required by state authorities. Otherwise, I would need to see it directed by city council.
And yes, I would like to sort of advocate that hybrid meeting is the way of the future and here to stay.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's take the vote then. Regina?
Chair Hirsch,
Yes.
Vice Chair Baltai,
Present.
Board Member,
Is that a vote?
Yes, it's a vote for yes.
I know you're here.
Sorry.
Okay.
Board Member Thompson,
Yes.
Board Member Chen. Yes. Board Member Rosenberg.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, well, thank you for helping me with that one, Ozma.
No worries.
So now, are there any speakers to talk on, speak on a non-agendized item?
So I haven't received any speaker cards, so don't have anyone in the council chambers. I see 3 participants in Zoom, but none of them have raised their hand yet.
Okay, so then we'll move on. Agenda changes, additions, deletions. Jody?
Yes, thank you. We do have just a slight change. We have 2 ad hoc committees this afternoon. The first one had Board Member Baltai and Board Member Thompson's name on them. But this prior ad hoc committee, it was actually Chair Hirsch and Board Member Thompson that were reviewing that. So we're going to stay with that same team. Thank you.
Thank you. By the way, I want to comment to hear that we have a tabbed book. Medina, I guess I thank you for that. It's a very helpful, especially on a book like this one, where we have so many different items that we need to discuss to be able to turn to it. Okay, so city official reports. I guess that would be you again, Jody.
Yes, thank you. Jody Gerhart, Manager of Current Planning. So first up, we just have our schedule just showing the different hearing dates. It looks like Board Member Thompson has said that she's not going to be able to make one of the December meetings. So we just record those sorts of things here. And on the next page. So you'll see for the next hearing, September 1st, we're hoping to bring you 824 San Antonio, which is a preliminary review. We also have 250 Cambridge, which is a facade modification. And then 180 El Camino would be an ad hoc committee for the building EEs. And we have Board Member Balte and Chen would be part of that ad hoc committee for the next meeting. Also, too, what we've started to do is put new projects here to show you, these are projects that will likely come to the ARB in the future. I just have the most recent one here, which is another Stanford Shopping Center project. But in talking with the chair and the vice chair during the pre-meeting, it's my understanding that they would like a running list of sort of all the pending projects that are likely to come to the ARB. So in the next packet, we will do that. Thank you.
Oh, that's terrific. Yes. I'm really excited about that look ahead on all projects. I do have a question, Jody. If we want to, as we see those projects, go online to find out what they're all about, to find how would we do that?
So for all of the hearing items, which, obviously things that come to the ARB are coming to a hearing, we do project web pages. Those web pages are supposed to be up within the first couple days of the project being on file. That is not a perfect science because we're running on a pretty slim staff right this minute, but we do try and get those web pages up early so that you can see everything. And if for some reason there's not a web page for a specific project, we always have Building Eye, and Building Eye is connected to our database. And so within 24 hours, everything's up on Building Eye.
Okay. There was another item we discussed, which was a summary of council screening.
Yes, sorry. Thank you very much for the reminder. Maybe during the announcements, I can do that. I'm coming back from vacation, so it's been, I'm getting pulled in about 20 directions, but during the announcement section, I can give a summary of council hearing because I agree that that's a good thing for this board to hear.
Right. So this is something for all other board members to know that we felt that was a way to connect us up with what the council has done now. So they recently had a meeting this past Monday about the San Antonio Road housing project, significant project. And so the summary sheet on that would be really good to see. And then to connect to the plans, and to start looking at projects in advance is going to be very useful, especially when you get to a project like that, which is complicated, which is zoning changes, which is PHZ zoning, which you'll see a lot of coming up in projects, especially San Antonio Road. So I'm quite excited to make sure that we get that information. Anyone want to speak to that?
Jody said she'd bring it up later in our meeting, David. So
Yeah.
I think we'll talk about it then.
That's fine. We can do that. Wanted to sort of describe why we decided to do that. Okay, so under official reports, I think later on in the meeting, we would also like to summarize the ad hoc responses, which frequently we don't go into it. You want to talk to it, Joni?
Yes, so during our pre-meeting, there was a conversation about ad hoc committees. And I had instituted a while back that since it's not recorded, we don't have minutes, it's not a public hearing where we need to do that. But of course, everyone would like to know the outcome. And so we had been doing sort of these one-page summaries, also because those ad hoc committees had been happening after the approval letter. And that was the main reason for doing that. When we switched to doing the ad hoc committees before the approval letter, those sort of summary minutes dropped off. And, I'm hearing from the chair and the vice chair that they'd like that to come back. And so I have, on the most recent ad hoc committees, I have made that known to those project planners. And then going forward, especially for these two ad hoc committees that we have coming up, we will be doing summary minutes for those.
Excellent. Okay, so now under tab 3, we could go into action items. The first action item is 300 Pasteur sign and master sign program exception. Public hearing, quasi judicial, 300 Pasteur Drive. A recommendation on applicant's request for approval of minor board level architectural review application to allow the exception to master plan program at 300 Pasteur Drive, environmental assessment exempt from CEQA per section 1530. So let's just get to that one. The applicant is here. Joe, oh, okay, sorry. Yes, Foley, you take
Emily
over.
Foley, our planner, has a presentation. Thank you.
Right,
Good morning,
that's the way we do it. Okay, thank you.
but I think Vice Chair Balte was going to say something.
Oh, do you want to go through disclosures, David, first?
Oh, did I miss that one? Yes. I wanted to mention not only disclosures. What is disclosures? We go visit the site. That's usually the first thing we do. But there might be the circumstance where you speak to somebody who is representing the applicant. And so those would be part of what you would really use as a disclosure at this time as well.
Yeah, I think just any information that you have learned, prior to this public hearing, that your other fellow board members should know about because it may sway their decision. And so, if you visited the site and found an oak tree that wasn't in the plans, please let us know. If you talk to a neighbor, if you talk to the applicant, just things that you learned about the project that may not be in the staff report. Thank you.
I visited the site early this week.
I have nothing to disclose. I visited the site in the past.
I'll say the same thing. Medical appointments. I visited the site a few times.
I have no disclosures, thank you.
I have no disclosures at this time.
Okay.
Okay, yes, good morning, board. This is the presentation for the sign exception at 300 Pasteur, which, as we all know, is the Stanford University Medical Center. So this project includes 9 new signs. However, only one requires the exception. That is the proposed monument sign that will be the entrance to the 300 Pasteur Cancer Center location. Some parts of the medical center are kind of being rebranded under a cancer center sub-brand. And so most of the signage in this package is related to that. There is 1 drop-off area sign, 3 building wall signs, 2 corner-mounted directional signs, 1 freestanding pedestrian directional, and 1 building address number. All of those fit within the existing sign program and the existing sign regulations. The materials proposed here are consistent with the existing materials for signage. Everything you see on the left here has been previously approved. And then the proposed monument sign also includes a travertine material. These are all on the materials board. And the travertine stone is also used on other signs around the campus. This sign shows, or this slide shows the sign that requires the exception. It is 41 square feet. It is 3 feet 9 inches tall. Since it is less than 5 feet tall, it would normally have a maximum size of 27 square feet. However, since it is a larger building monument, they are applying for the exception to allow the larger size. This slide shows other signs that fit that same horizontal orientation and kind of stone materials as well. This sign is this slide shows both the proposed drop-off sign and the pedestrian directional towards the back closer to the building. The proposed pedestrian directional is exactly the same, fits in the same sign family as existing signs on the campus. However, the drop-off sign is about 2 feet taller than similar vehicle directional signage. This slide showing what has been approved in the past. Another change is that the existing vehicle directional signage has the Stanford Medical logo at the bottom, but the new sign has the Stanford Medicine Cancer Center logo at the top. As I previously mentioned, these signs already fit within the sign regulations and don't require an exception. 2 of them are the Cancer Center branding, one at 300 Pasteur and the other at 875 Blake Wilbur. And then the 900 Blake Wilbur signage is being updated in the same color and material scheme. These signs are replacing existing signs and being inserted in the space that was previously allotted for those signs. There's also 2 new corner signs. This is a new sign typology. One of them is at 875 Blake Wilbur, indicating the Cancer Center at that location. The other is a directional for 900 Blake Wilbur, pointing down the corridor towards the entrance to that building. Lastly, this is the address number, which is kind of outside of the purview of the ARB, but it's being included in this package since the other changes at 875 Blake Wilbur remove an existing number sign. And so the recommendation is that the Architectural Review Board make a recommendation for approval based on the findings. We also have the applicants from SUMC, Molly Swenson and Rumal Panglau, as well as the designers from Clear Story. Thank you.
Do we have any questions for Emily here? Do, go ahead.
Good morning, Emily. A couple of quick questions, if I could. I understand there's a sign exception. Is that the reason this comes before the ARB, or refresh my memory? Would this ordinarily come before the ARB regardless?
Well, it's a master sign program though. So yeah. So it is only because it is the sign exception for the one sign that exceeds the otherwise allowable size.
So if they did not ask for that exception, we wouldn't be reviewing this application at this level.
That's correct.
So as I understand it, the sign exception is for the large monument sign that's horizontal, not vertical. And by virtue of it being horizontal and low, I guess horizontal means it's less than 5 feet above the ground. Its area limitation is less. Is that area limitation linked to the size of the building or the frontage?
It would be, however, all of the buildings on the campus are so large that the allowable signage would otherwise exceed there is a maximum size, and that maximum size is 27 square feet regardless of the building
I'm
size.
just trying to understand it. So as I understand it, when it's less than a certain height, it's limited to a maximum of 27 square feet, regardless of the size of the building.
That's correct.
And if it were taller, then it could be a larger sign.
Yes.
So, okay, it's good to understand that. Thank you. The second question, you just dropped something about a new sign typology, a corner sign. What do you mean by new typology?
So the other, no, it's not. So the other signs proposed, such as the drop-off sign, is consistent with the design of other signs on the property. However, these corner signs seen here are not included in the existing master sign program. And so also need ARB approval.
I guess I just don't understand the sign program. When you say not included, that means that any sign that has a two-dimensional, I'm sorry, faces two directions, like a corner sign, is just not allowed.
No,
by
there
code?
are other corner signs. It's just that this sign being, these proportions, this background color, et cetera, doesn't currently exist anywhere else on the site.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? No. All right, so then let's give the applicant some time to speak. You have 10 minutes. Please say and spell your name for the record. Thank you.
Thank you. And good morning, board members. I'm Molly Swenson. That's MOLLYSWENSON. I'm with Stanford Medicine, and I'm joined today by Rumel Panglau, also of Stanford Medicine, and Nikki San Miguel and Alan Kriegel of Clear Story. As I believe you're all aware, Stanford Medicine is in the midst of a multi-year facilities renewal and replacement project. And now that we've completed our new adult hospital at 500 Pasteur Drive, we're proceeding with renovations within the pre-existing hospital at 300 Pasteur Drive. The updated inpatient facilities will serve oncology patients and will be known as the Stanford Medicine Cancer Center. In preparation for the opening of the first phase next spring, we're proposing new signage which will be essential to our patients and visitors in navigating to the inpatient Stanford Medicine Cancer Center entrance. And we are also proposing additional signage which will elevate the profile of the existing outpatient component of the Stanford Medicine Cancer Center. I'd like to hand it over to Nikki San Miguel with Clear Story to share more detail on our proposed signage updates.
Hello, I'm Nikki San Miguel with Clear Story. NIKKI SAN space MIGUEL. So I'm going to share my screen. We have a quick presentation today of a lot of the information Emily had already covered in her deck, but we wanted to provide a little bit more clarity about some of the goals and intent behind the sign program that we're proposing today. And so just for context, I know back in 2019, when we got the original master sign program approved, a lot of board members were not part of the project yet at that point. And so this is just to give you an idea of the extent of that master sign program, which covered a large number of signs along the main pedestrian and vehicular arteries of the Stanford Medical Campus. And every sign in yellow, marked with a yellow highlight, required a sign exception, primarily because each side of Welch Road had a different zoning district, which had different signage allowance. And so our goal was to equalize the experience for the patient on both sides of Welch, so that as you're driving along Welch Road, you have the same sign typology across the campus. And so those were the exceptions that we pursued, and what resulted was a sign family that looked like this. And so I know there was a previous question about what was in the original program. And so this is that complete family, which is primarily about directing vehicles and pedestrian traffic across the site. And so as Molly mentioned, we're bringing forward 2 cancer centers to the project, into the master sign program. And so the signs that we're proposing as part of this amendment is really focused on, oops, something's blinking there, is really focused on sign locations oriented around identifying the 2 cancer centers. And so this is the existing sign family that was part of the master sign program, and we're proposing to expand it to include 2 additional monuments that identify the cancer center. So we currently do not have any monuments that provide this level of identification. And as Emily had showed, we're also introducing 3 building attached sign types that are also identifying the cancer centers or the 900 Blake Wilbur entrance. And so in general, we are trying to work with the same palette, but the only new material that we're introducing is the travertine. So starting with the cancer center at 300 Pasteur, this is the main drop-off for the Stanford Hospital at 500 Pasteur here. And with the activation of the 300 Pasteur Cancer Center, what's happening is that there'll be 2 drop-offs in this loop, one for the 500 Pasteur Hospital and one for 300 Pasteur Cancer Center drop-off. And so our goal is to really clearly identify that separate cancer center drop-off. And then this dotted line is the path of travel to get to the cancer center entrance. And so the signs that we're proposing as part of this amendment is also to support that path of travel to that cancer center entrance. So for context, this is the main entrance to Stanford Hospital, which is obviously going to want to pull a lot of the users and pedestrians that get out of their car. So we want to provide more clarity by adding these signs to identify the 300 Pasteur drop-off. And as Emily had mentioned, we are increasing the size of the sign from the 7'6" currently in the program to 9'6" because we want to make sure that if cars are queuing at this drop-off, the sign is still visible over the tops of the cars. And as when you get off at the drop-off, we also want to provide wayfinding to support that path of travel. So we've got this pedestrian directional, which matches what's already in the sign family of the existing master sign program. And then this new sign type that we are requesting that exception. And so we did intentionally pursue a horizontal monument here because it felt more architecturally contextual and appropriate for the area. It doesn't block pedestrian sightlines because it remains at 3'10" in height. And it also is consistent with the language of other monuments across the Stanford Medical Campus. We show a couple donor signs here just to show that there are travertine signs also within the vicinity of this sign that we're proposing. So that's why we want to introduce this material to the master sign program. So here, board member Hirsch, you had a question about the allowances for the for freestanding signs. And so here on the left is what we are proposing in size, and to the right is the 27 square foot maximum size that's allowed. And that 27 square foot gets capped off right here. The chart only goes up to a frontage of 200 feet. And so even if the frontage of our project exceeds that, the chart cuts off right there, and that's the maximum allowable. But we did want to show table 2 here as well, which is a different allowance for signs over 5 feet in height, which allows for a sign up to 66 square feet in size. So this is just for reference to show that if we did pursue a sign over 5 feet, that allowance would be much more generous. However, we are really hoping to proceed with a horizontal sign for the reasons stated earlier. And then after you've passed that monument sign, you'll get to the cancer center entrance at 300 Pasteur, and we've got the signage over the doorway. Moving over to Blake Wilbur Drive, similar to the 500 and 300p shared drop-off, we have a single drop-off split between the 875 Blake Wilbur building and the 900 Blake Wilbur building. And the drop-off always occurs here, but the pedestrian path of travel, if you're going to 900 Blake Wilbur, you have to cross the crosswalk, walk across the plaza, and arrive at the entrance here. So the signs that we're proposing are about clearly identifying these two entrances and supporting that path of travel. And so experientially, as you drive onto Blake Wilbur Drive, you'll approach the building. There'll be an address here that confirms that you're heading towards the right direction. And then as you get towards the entrance, we're proposing signage that replaces existing signage, but branded with the new Cancer Center brand and clearly identifying the Cancer Center entrance. Here's that crosswalk to get to the 900 Blake Wilbur entrance. And so you can see that the entrance to 900 Blake Wilbur is obscured by these trees. And so what we're hoping to do is provide more clarity for that path of travel to 900 Blake Wilbur so that people that get off at the drop off to the left of the shot can more easily access that main path of travel. There is an existing pedestrian directional sign here already as part of the original master sign program, but this sign is really intended for people that are coming out of 900 Blake Wilbur. It actually wraps the corner. You don't see the other side of the sign. Whereas this sign is really facilitating traffic from a longer viewing distance. And as you get to the 900 Blake Wilbur entrance, we are trying to create that similar experience where we have the signage over the doorway with a gray background. This is not a cancer center though, but it does have cancer center services. So we wanted to make sure it was covered as part of the program. So today we are hoping for approval on a sign exception for the main monument here, as well as approval on the expansion of the master sign program. So everything highlighted in yellow is a new sign type to the existing master sign program. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's have some board comments. Is there anybody here who hand up? Who'd like to start?
David, don't you want to get public commentary?
Is there any public commentary?
I haven't received any speaker cards. I see several participants. They have not raised their hand.
Okay, so let's bring it to the board then.
David, could I ask a question of the applicant? I wonder if you could explain to me more clearly, where is the travertine background being put on the signs? It's a beautiful looking material on your sample board, but I'm sure it's in the drawings, but just explain it for me if you would, please.
It's specifically on this sign type that we are requesting the exception. So the travertine is primarily, let me mark it up, just on the beige face of the sign here.
Just for that one horizontal monument sign or all of the other?
Just the horizontal monument. And so the other signs here to the right, those are all painted aluminum panels because these messages change more frequently. And so we wanted to have that more cost-effective flexibility. Whereas at the Cancer Center, a more permanent message.
If I could follow up then, is that travertine somehow involved in the finish of the buildings, the new nursing pods perhaps? Or is it a completely unique material just to that sign?
It is not part of the building finishes. However, we do have the travertine material on some of the existing site signage.
Do you know what the material is of the new nursing pods? I recall it being some sort of a tan or beige.
Right, it is a beige-ish tactile panel.
What is a tactile panel, please?
It's a sort of a rain screen.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
No other questions for me, David.
Any other questions from the board here?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
So for the monument sign, currently there is a street lamp at that location. So will that street lamp be relocated?
Correct. That is the plan. So we will be repurposing the power connections there to uplight the sign for external illumination.
Okay. So a follow-up question for what the board Vice Chair Bautai just asked for. So what's the back looks like? Is there any landscape behind the sign, or there is also some signage put on the travertine?
There is no proposal to modify the landscaping significantly from what's shown in this rendering. And so it will have the greenery behind it. And then there'll be uplighting along the front of the sign. And so if there is any future landscaping, it would be something that's low growing, so it doesn't block visibility to the sign.
And one more question on building 875 Blake Wilbur. So I noticed there is another entrance not far away from the one you proposed. That is, if we go to page 15, that is one you labeled. The glazing number is 38, just under the sign 327. So there is an existing building ID corner sign there. Will that one stay as it is, or it will also be the new one?
So looking at the site plan here that I'm going to share on screen.
Yeah.
So here at this caret, there is another entrance to the building that's specifically for the Lane Surgery Center. And so we are currently not proposing to update that signage right now. The focus of this amendment was the Cancer Center only. But in response to your question, there is a sign that looks just like this at that entrance that says Lane Surgery Center.
Okay, thank you for your clarification.
Are there any other questions here? I have maybe a couple. One is that the sign for, I'm not sure which one, let's see. The sign that is on Blake Wilbur that gets you to the building that is not the Cancer Center, 875, is that? Yeah, okay. So there's an existing sign at that corner. I think there was a question as to whether that was needed to stay there or not to stay in our earlier conversation prior to. Is it, it's intended that that would stay? Is there a purpose for that to stay in the message? Is it an important message? And just to add to this, I know that there is that door, the other door that you get to at this end of that building. So that is really only kind of a staff entry door for the most part, rather than a public door. I know that 875 is kind of an important wayfinding door to get to because it's remote from this location. So would you address the drop off as well? It will be just before that pedestrian passage crossover from the parking area. And therefore that's the place. I can understand why the sign is there, but will that be the only drop off?
In terms of drop off location, going to the site plan, the way that the current circulation is right now is that the drop off location is here. They don't want cars pausing on this side of the loop to drop off patients for 900 Blake Wilbur. And so all the queuing and lanes are set up for drop off here. And so that path of travel here, the red line, is what we're supporting with the signage. So in response to your other question about there's a secondary entrance to 900 Blake Wilbur on this side of the building. That is not a primary entrance to our knowledge. And I believe with COVID right now, with the pandemic, the precautions are that all traffic is funneled to this main entrance, and this is closed at the moment.
Okay.
And then in terms of the pedestrian sign, the existing pedestrian sign here, location 215, we are proposing to keep the sign because it does support path of travel for someone leaving 900 Blake Wilbur and walking this path of travel. It's not showing in this photo, but this sign wraps the corner of this wall so that the face there is a sign face with messages facing people that are walking down the sidewalk from 900 Blake Wilbur. So that message, if I can pull it up here. So here's an example of a sign that wraps a corner, similar. And the message at that sign is specifically directing back to the path of travel to the emergency department, which points you towards the main promenade and spine of the medical campus. And then it also points you to parking garage and 875 Blake Wilbur and the Stanford Hospital. So it does include messaging to support that path of travel to go back across the crosswalk and reach other destinations beyond that point.
Thank you.
It also does have this complete map graphic to support wayfinding for the global campus.
I have one other question concerning the large sign that's in front of the new building, and which and then there's a the monument sign that's in the ground that towards the center. Those people coming from the parking garage, let's say that they weren't dropped off. I imagine that the scale of the sign that is in the circular area there will be seen. Is there any other sign that you need to have for a directional sign to the cancer center from people who enter, let's say, between the older building and the circle into the pedestrian path?
So we are currently studying updates to messaging on existing signs on campus. So there are a lot of signs already located throughout the campus that we can just refresh the messages to include the cancer center as a new destination on there. But at this time, we're not coming forward with a proposal on that yet.
Very good. That's what I was hoping you would be doing. All right, so I think that's satisfactory. You can move on. Do we need to have a motion here to, or is there more? Sorry?
Could I offer some comments on the project, David?
Absolutely, sure.
Thank you. I have a number of conflicting feelings. At one level, this just seems overkill to have such a project have to come before the Architecture Review Board. I'd really like to see these kind of things go at staff level. Emily's done a careful documented review, and having to bring it before us seems overkill. That said, you're asking me, so I'm going to tell you what I think. At a high level, for some reason, medical facilities always seem to have a cacophony of signs. There just seems so many needs, I guess, to have signs, and they always seem to be put up haphazardly and different. And visually, that just gets disjointing to me. So when I look at your corner sign at Blake Wilbur, it's a good example to me of what I really don't like to see happen visually. You have now two corner signs of different colors, different sizes, different heights, right next to a large recess in the building for some fire sprinkler apparatus. When you turn the corner and look into the building, there's two or three more small stand-mounted signs giving people detailed directions, probably get your COVID vaccine here, something like that. The total of all of this is just a visual mess. And it just reinforces to me this sense that I get when I go to medical facilities of disjointedness, and I'm not sure where I should be going. And I'm already uneasy because I'm going there, and I like to see the signs be consistent and smooth and welcoming. And when you put different signs of different colors and different shapes, each one has got a good reason for being there, but collectively, you start to hurt your basic mission of trying to make it easier for people. So I'm just offering that as a comment. I don't know that I really want to make a stand of what you should do in this particular case, but those corner signs to me are a great example of a place where you really could think it through differently. Find one sign that meets the goal of those two competing signs, find a way to integrate it better into the architecture. I'll say the same thing about the monument sign, the large pedestrian monument sign. Finishing that with a travertine, it's a beautiful stone, it's a lovely choice, but it's different than anything else. When I walk around that center, the new nursing pod is now different than the other buildings, which had their own unique finish. And again, you're not accomplishing that larger goal of being smoothingly consistent to make it easier for people to not feel disjointed. So it's just a commentary again for you that to the extent that you can, look at the big picture and make it visually comfortable, not individually exceptional. I think that's a better goal to go for. So I will address, though, the main reason this is in front of us is the sign exception. And I've struggled with that because at the face of reading their findings were required to make for a sign exception, I can't make them. However, I think with some creative stretching, we can make finding number 1 work. So I'm talking about the horizontal monument sign, which what are the exceptional or extraordinary circumstances? And I just don't see too many. But if we try this logic to my colleagues here, that this is a hospital and this particular campus is also pedestrian based where this particular sign is going. And because it's pedestrian based, having a vertical sign actually causes quite a conflict with sightlines. As busy doctors and patients are wrapping around that corner, a 9-foot or 6-foot tall sign would block your sight of somebody and you will bump into somebody. So it's a danger. It's not safe. And that's unique to the fact that this is both a medical facility where people are rushing and it's pedestrian based, not vehicular based, where this monument sign is. Most monument signs are intended for vehicular locations. So with that, I think we could make finding number 1 that that's what's exceptional about this, is that it's pedestrian based for the hospital. Once you accept that, then the other 2 findings are more straightforward to make. So I can support the sign exception with that change in the way the findings are written. I think that sign would be good then. So those are my comments. Thank you. Thank you, David, for letting me comment.
Are there any other comments? Yep.
I have some comments to add as well.
Sure.
If that's all right, just take a few minutes of your time. I actually fully agree with Board Member Balte here that I'm a little dismayed that this has come before the ARB because I find that it's a closed campus. It's a medical facility. We're talking about signage and wayfinding in a situation that's not necessarily visible to Palo Alto as a whole or Palo Alto's greater community. It really is once you're on the campus of Stanford Hospital that you are viewing these signs. So there's a part of me that feels this was a bit excessive to have to bring it to ARB. Now, that being said, I understand that the sign exception is required to come before us. And again, the fact that a building of this magnitude, of this mass, can't have an exception sort of built in to some extent. I mean, this is a truly an exceptional building because of its size, because of its condition, because of what it's used for. And I feel that this is an appropriate scale of signage for the size of the space and the location. When wandering around a hospital, having spent quite a bit of time there for family members, I will respectfully disagree with Mr. Balte here on this point. I think that the variety of signs actually can be helpful because when you're looking for something from far away, you can see that new white corner wrap sign quite clearly from quite a distance. The new signage above the doors, just reading Cancer Center, very clear, very precise, very easy to find, ever it is. The different types of sign will catch your eye in different ways. Now I don't believe in a cacophony of signs either, but I think that each sign sort of serves a purpose. I find that this family of signage is consistent, it's cohesive, it's clear. I think that all the signs that you presented are an improvement. And I would say that I'm just, well, I'm a little bummed that you guys had to come and do this whole presentation for us, but I appreciate it. And thank you for your time.
So Chair, if I may. So I just wanted to procedurally let everyone know that the Stanford Medical Center does have a master sign program. The purpose of a master sign program is to sort of, think through the entire site and what sort of signs the applicant may want on the property. I think this master sign program was probably done a few years ago. And maybe it's out of date. Maybe it needs to be updated. If the program accommodated this type of sign, then we would not be coming to the board. And so only because it's an exception to that master sign program is it coming to the board. So thank you.
Understood. Thank you for that, Jody.
Ozma?
Thanks. Thanks to the applicant and staff. I don't mind seeing this stuff, just for the record. I also really appreciate Board Member Chen for going on site and noticing the lampposts and things like that. I apologize, I wasn't able to get out there this time. I can make the findings to approve the sign exception for the monument sign. I maybe disagree with my fellow board member Balte about the material. I think the Travertine is an excellent choice. There is precedent for that elsewhere on the campus, as you've demonstrated. And I think also because this is a pedestrian oriented location, having something that's like a very rich material that has a lot of detail like Travertine is really like the more we can get of that in the campus, I think the better it will be for anyone that has to experience it. I would be kind of sad to trade that out for slightly more affordable material that's on the building just because it's on the building. So I really much support the Travertine choice. Yeah, the corner sign, I also had a similar thought that Board Member Balte had about look at these two disparate signs next to each other. I think after understanding better their purposes, I can be okay with the way they are. I guess all I'll say is if for whatever reason you as the applicant decide to change that after hearing our comments, I think would be okay with that as well. But I have no problem with them as they are, knowing their function right now. Those are my comments. Thanks.
Well, sometimes my role is to sum up everybody else's comment, but I'd like to add.
No comments from me.
No comment? What, you haven't? Okay. Thanking the consultant and the hospital for putting this all together and presenting it to us. Having visited the hospital a few times now, and all of the separate areas that you go to, in fact, separate cancer areas that are on campus and off campus. Sign programs like this are really quite essential. And if you visited this campus a few years ago, you wouldn't have had the nice directional signs that are presented here. I agree with the comments that have been made concerning the Travertine material. I think the comment about looking at the back of it is a good comment as well, and something we have in previous signs also commented on, but good that it was picked up this time. And somehow that lower large sign is really essential to indicate the importance of the building itself and the size of it, and obviously the extensive amount of medical cancer research that's going, cancer hospital usage for that extensive base of the building, that pods are going to be added to and program expanded. So it's an appropriately large sign for the appropriately large use of this particular area of the medical facility. I think it's notable that you will keep on considering wayfinding and not close the subject, because it's going to be a continuing issue. And just one sign or two signs doesn't necessarily answer all of the wayfinding issues that you may have coming into the entry into the promenade. So this becomes an important aspect of the future signage. But it seems to me that you have this all in mind, that the scale is being very carefully considered, that the brightness of the color is identified, that it is an entire program, and it looks like to me like it's going to be successful. And in any case, I'm happy you brought it in before us. So I don't think since we really don't have to make a motion on this, that we do? Yeah, okay. Then we do.
This is an action item and we do require a motion.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
So
I move, okay, can I make a motion?
who says that? Yeah.
Okay,
Awesome.
I move that we recommend approval of the proposed project based on the findings and subject to the conditions of approval.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, that's two. Can we have a vote?
Vice Chair Baltai,
Yes.
Board Member Chen,
Yes.
Chair Hirsch,
Yes.
Board Member Rosenberg,
Yes.
Board Member Thompson.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So now we'll be moving on to the next action item, which is tab 4 in the book. That's El Camino Real, recommendation for application to request the approval of board level review application for allow a storefront facade and signage for backcountry space 715 building E currently vacant. Exception to current vacant sign logo may require an exception. Environmental assessment exempt from SECA per section blah, blah, blah. Zoning district CC, community commercial. For more information, contact. And we have by Zoom, Tamara, would you like to please explain this project?
Should we do disclosures first, David?
Oh, yes, again. Has everybody visited this site? You want to start here?
Yeah, I visited the site.
Nothing to disclose.
Yes, visited the site.
Yes, I've visited the site this weekend.
And yes, I visited the site.
Okay, Tamara, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, board members. Tamara Harrison with Michael Baker International, contract planner for the city, presenting. I'll share my screen here. Against this action item is the backcountry facade change and signage at the Stanford Shopping Center. It's located at 180 El Camino Real within Building C and Suite 650A, and the tenant space is currently vacant. As the site is located within the Stanford Shopping Center, is subject to the center's master tenant facade and sign program. And so the sign program identifies those tenant spaces that require a city review with the green line shown here on the exhibit. And so those tenant storefronts that exceed 35 feet in length require the ARB public hearing. And then those storefronts that are less than 35 feet require just a staff level review. So given the location of the backcountry tenant space and the length of their front facade, we're here at the ARB hearing today. So again, the project's located at the Stanford Shopping Center and the front facade faces El Camino Real. There is also a rear facade that is more interior to the shopping center, and it proposes to change the existing facades to accommodate the new backcountry tenant, and also proposes new signage for the tenant. And in addition, the project has been conditioned to provide 5 bicycle parking spaces. So the project does not propose to increase the floor area ratio, the height or lot coverage of the site, and it doesn't propose to change any of the circulation or the landscaping at the center or the use of the tenant space. It only seeks to change the interior and exterior of the tenant space. So the new facades will consist of metal wall panels, wood siding, glazing, and aluminum signage. And the proposed facade design is consistent with the master program as well as the character of the center. So here for colors and material boards, you're looking at the proposed front facade here, and the primary material is the black metal panels. You can see glazing proposed at the windows and the doors, and then the wood siding would be proposed at the recessed entries into the storefront. And then the rear facade also includes the metal panels in black and wood siding at the recessed entry, as well as glazing. In terms of signage, the signage is going to be subject to the Palo Alto Municipal Code, which allows for a number of wall signs as long as they are within the wall sign area regulations. So for the front facade, we're looking at roughly slightly over 2,800 square feet, which would allow a maximum of 110 square feet of signage for wall signs. And the subject rear facade is roughly 762 square feet, allowing roughly 52 square feet of signage. In addition, the front facade would be subject to the El Camino Real design guidelines as the tenant space faces El Camino Real. And those design guidelines require that any signage facing that street be reduced by 1/2 to 2/3 of what the municipal code would allow. So in terms of the front facade, once we apply this reduction, we're looking at an allowance of 55 square feet to 73 square feet for the front facade. Those guidelines would not apply to the rear facade as it does not face El Camino Real. In terms of the Stanford Master Program, which also has regulations for signage, it allows for one primary facade wall as well. Excuse me, facade wall sign as well. The tenant is seeking larger wall sign logos beyond what is allowed by the Master Sign Program for the center. So the Master Stanford Center Program allows wall signages. So staff is requesting that the ARB determine whether or not the additional height will be allowed for those logos. So key considerations and conditions is to ensure that the project is consistent and in conformance with the ARB findings, the city sign code, the El Camino Real design guidelines, and the Stanford Shopping Center Master Program, as long as the exception is granted. So with that, staff recommends that the ARB take the following action and direct staff as to whether or not the exception will be allowed for additional signage logo height, and recommend approval of the proposed project facade changes and signage to the Director of Planning and Development Services based on findings and subject to staff's conditions of approval. This concludes staff's presentation, and I am available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Tamara. Does anybody have any questions for Tamara? Nobody here?
Sorry, I've got one.
Okay.
Yeah, so the, just to clarify the exception, so there's just one logo on the facade facing El Camino that's 3'6". So that's the thing that's sort of not compliant, and it would have to be 2 feet in height in order to comply?
So actually, it's going to be both of the logos on each facade. So there's a logo and channel letters proposed for each facade, the front and the rear. And each of those logos are at 42 inches in height. And the master tenant sign program limits that at 24 inches. So it would be both of the logos that need the exception.
All right, thanks.
If I may, packet page 52 has the outline of the Stanford Shopping Center tenant program. And so you'll see there's primary signs and secondary signs in that table number 3 on packet page 52. For this particular facility, there is a front facade and a back facade. I mean, that could be interpreted as a primary and a secondary. We felt like these were large enough entrances, though, that they were both primary. And so we're using those regulations to review them.
Thanks for that clarification.
That was my question, so thank you, Osman.
Okay. Any others? No. Okay, so we have the applicant here. Let's hear from you. 10 minutes. You have 10 minutes if you'd like or you need. And I'd like you to spell your name and say your name. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Garrett Thompson. That's Garrett. Last name Thompson, Thompson. Thank you for all having us here today. What we wanted to illustrate today was the difference in signage comparison of what is compliant versus what we're proposing. If you look at the top of our screen, we have our proposed signage with our backcountry, the goat icon, and then the logo type backcountry adjacent to that, which nets out at 42 inches. This is the standard that we've used in 3 other formats so far this year. And if you look at the bottom of the page, you can see what the compliant signage looks like on our facade. When we have a facade length of over 107 linear feet, that small of a sign, we've always used it in the lockup with the goat and the backcountry logo type. We've never used just the word backcountry. So when you shrink it down to that, it becomes almost illegible from the street position. On page 2, I'll shrink this down a bit. You can see what that looks like in flat elevation moving forward. The top again is the proposed signage, and the bottom is the compliant signage. Now look, this is the rear entry coming in from the mall. We have the 2 size signs. Again, at the top, we have the proposed, and the bottom at the compliant signage. And then seeing that again in flat elevation, again, the top has the proposed signage and the bottom is the compliant signage. One of the other things that we wanted to touch on was just looking at some of the other executions of current stores that have been built and developed. This first example is in Chicago. This is actually a much larger logo sign. This is actually a 4'6" logo sign on this. But you can see our frontage is actually pretty similar to what we have at the Palo Alto location. This is the first built example that we have out in Seattle at University Village, which is a lifestyle center. This is the size that we would be looking at incorporating into Palo Alto. We have similar architectural features here with our salt box shape and the wrapped wood on the interior of that. And again, just another detail shot here of what that signage looks like. In this particular case, this sign was front and halo lit, whereas at Palo Alto, we'll be just rear lit. This is the most recent example from Bozeman, Montana. Again, this is the same size sign that we were proposing, a 42-inch goat logo and 24-inch high backcountry typeface. The logo at the corner is a little bit larger. And then you've got the logo on the side door as well at the same height that we're proposing. The last page we have is just, there was some commentary about the acoustic metal panels. We just wanted to show what that actually looks like in real life because a rendering is never quite 100% reflectional of what happens in real life. So you can see how the breakups look between the panels. And then it does have some reflectivity. So the sun setting, the night sky, all of those things will have some subtle reflections in the black panels. And that concludes our case.
Thank you. So are there some, any questions for? Yes, okay, Asma.
Sorry, when you said acoustic metal panel, did you mean aluminum composite?
Yeah, aluminum composite, sorry.
Okay, no
That's
worries.
correct.
So I had a question about your the sort of showcase windows. So are those inset? Sorry, our drawings are, maybe I could have looked at them. Are they inset and then the wood is kind of all along the inside?
Yeah, so I'm bringing up the plan here. The wood actually falls right on this the structural line here. So the glazing is here, there's display, and then the wood sits back about 42 inches or so back into the space. So that wood bulkhead is about 4.5 feet behind the glazing.
I see. So the glazing is in front of the wood.
Correct. Yep. There is glazing on the sides and the roof as well. We just wanted to bring in that element of warmth, knowing that we've got this massive black facade.
Right. Okay. And so, sorry, just to clarify, the wood also goes up the side of the walls and into the soffit as well?
Yes, that's correct. The wood wraps up the entire salt box shape and then comes back down. Similar to what we have at the Seattle location, although our glazing is a little bit different just due to site conditions.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. So one is, do you have any blade sign for this project or any projecting sign?
No, we originally looked at a blade sign, and to be compliant with that size sign, it on how large our facade is, it felt very underscaled. So we felt it was a disservice to even have it. So we just eliminated it altogether.
Okay. And I have a question on the rear facade. So on your rendering, it seems like it's showing there are some vertical wood sidings there. So may I know what's the installation there and the dimension about the wood siding?
The installation is a vertical Akoya wood slat. They're spaced out. They're a 2x4 slat. They're spaced out equally at 2 inches. And then they're installed over top of the existing EFIS structure, which is painted black. In terms of height, I don't have one currently, but I'm guessing they're about 14 foot in length or height.
Okay. And what's the detailed treatment at the roof line when you turn around or the wall connecting the sloped tile roof?
So we're taking the paint up to the underside of the soffit for the tile roof.
Oh no, I mean on the upper side, the black panel when it meets the triangular shape you're pointing at, is it the wall that painted black or is also?
So that's an existing wall.
Okay.
So that would just be, yes, painted black.
Okay, so the black metal panel, will it turn around the corner or it just the front facade?
This is in the rear, we actually have a corrugated metal panel, which will wrap to the side, and then the triangular areas you see on either side will be painted.
Okay, thank you for your clarification.
No problem.
I have a few questions. Is there a sample of that corrugated metal panel on the material board?
We do not. Let me switch back to this. So that's just represented by this flat metal here, which is a flat black.
Sure, but there's no example of the texturing of it.
No, but if I flip to here's it installed at Seattle, if you can see that on my screen.
Yep. Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you. And just some sort of numbers questions. So your front facade is 107 linear feet?
Yeah, plus or minus.
Okay. Do you have a length of what that salt box shape is?
It's roughly 40 feet.
40 feet. Okay. And then the rear entry facade, how wide is that?
I believe it's about 25 feet.
Okay, perfect. All right, those are my questions. Thank you.
Asking this because it seems you have such a big windows in there, and I want to know if that photometrics are done with the interior lights turned on as well, or is it just the wall-mounted exterior lights plus the soffit recessed lights?
Andy, can you comment on that?
Yeah, these are just exterior lights, not interior.
Andy, are you the lighting guy or I want to know what would happen if you turn the interior lights on as well. How bright was it going to get going through the glass?
I am not the lighting guy. I'm with David Levy and Associates.
Okay, thanks. Yeah,
you know, we would have to rerun the photometrics in order to show you what that foot candle would be on the street.
What's your opinion? Do you think, I mean, you're familiar with the lighting you're specifying inside. Is it going to be a very brightly lit storefront on the inside?
No, it's subtle. I don't think that you're going to see an immense amount of light pouring out through that glazing.
In the same vein, as I look at your renderings, the very first one on the front page seems to show either a wood panel or maybe a dropped ceiling behind the storefronts on the left and the right side. Can you explain what that is? Or,
The wood panel is part of, the existing structure within this unit falls at, I believe, 10'2". We've basically chose to wrap that panel in wood to just help emulate some of the warmth coming through and tie together interior and exterior treatments.
I see. So the glazing sticks up above that to encompass the entire opening.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So
the glazing goes all the way up, and then that panel sits behind it about 4.5 feet back.
Wonderful, thank you. Is there a specification in here for the exterior wall-mounted light fixtures? I'm asking that because on the renderings, it looks like a simple vertical fixture that's indirect, but I thought I saw one with your logo emblazoned in the fixture as well. Can you clarify what that fixture will be?
Yes, it's a very simple fixture. It is almost treated like a halo light fixture. It's a very linear fixture. We do not have any emblazoned logo or anything on that.
Garrett, I think that's in the packet. I think it might be page 5.
That's trees.
No, I'm pretty sure we have that in here.
It's a tech lighting. It's a wall-mounted light.
Is it perhaps described on sheet S1 on the side there of the sign detail?
That would be up, Garrett.
No, it's not described there. That's the lighting for the logo signs.
Okay, well, that answers my questions. Thank you very much.
Sorry, I have a follow-up question. Can we go back to the front facade? Sorry, how do I describe this? So the GL2, so that's spandrel, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And I guess is it like a black spandrel?
No, it's a mirrored spandrel. You see that in the upper portion of the salt box. We wanted to keep with this consistent iconic shape that we have developed. One of the things that we have, though, is we have this existing structure behind that we're trying to block. So in order to keep the shape looking like our salt box and keep the glazing in that current pattern, we've resulted in doing spandrel above that horizontal mullion.
In your design studies, had you looked at making that wood instead of spandrel? Kind of like your other.
We did. We actually preferred the simplicity of one open shape, knowing that most people and the reflectivity of their glass, most people probably won't notice.
Okay, thanks.
If I could follow up on the detail here, David, on the wood siding, the Akoya, for the finish, it just says Maho. Could you elaborate what that is, please?
Yeah, so Maho is the color. Akoya is a base product, and it's kind of the new miracle wood. It's LEED certified, it's Ford stewardship certified. It's got a 50-year warranty for anything that's installed above ground. Maho is just simply the color of the stain that's applied to it. There's multiple different colors. Initially, when you see Akoya, it has a little bit of a yellow greenish tint. The Maho tends to be a little bit more of a warm, neutral brown color applied to the surface.
Is that a manufacturer's transparent stain, or is that produced by the lumber company?
It's produced by the manufacturer and the sales representative. So all the Akoya is actually milled per project. Akoya has become kind of a name brand in terms of wood, but then there's local distributors and individual manufacturers of the product.
So you're saying from Akoya, you're just buying their product that's specified as Maho color, is that right?
So Akoya actually is represented by Reson Timber Co. out of Pennsylvania, as well as many other sales manufacturers. They're the only company, Reson is the only company that has the Maho color that we're looking for.
Okay, thanks. I just trying to get a clarification on what it is. Thank you very much.
Mhm.
To quickly follow up to that question, is there a type of shine or sheen to this, or is this really going to be that matte, clear finish?
It's pretty matte.
Great, thank you.
It's right here.
Unless there are other questions, I think we could bring this back to the board for comments. So let's do that with
Public commentary.
public comments.
yeah.
Are there any public comments? I forget those people out there.
Shouldn't do that.
It's hard to see them from here.
I shouldn't do that. So are there any
Yes,
comments?
The people in Zoom land, I don't see any raised hands. And we don't have any speaker cards, correct, Medina?
That is correct, yeah.
Okay, so then it's legit. Let's bring it back. Who would like to start that?
Kendra?
So I admit I'm actually quite partial to this design. The simplicity, the black, the wood, the clear glass. This is definitely right in my vein of architectural preferences. I think it's clean. I think it's simple. I really appreciate the warmth that the wood brings to it. I think the glazing using the mirrored spandrel glass was clever. I think that really sort of speaks to me. Now, in terms of the signage exception, I am having a hard time figuring out why the rear facade should be allowed an exception with a 25-foot length. And I understand that we're treating them both as primary entrances, but with a 25-foot length facade span, I can't buy off on that needing to be an exceptionally large sign. So for me, that's sort of my sticking point right now, is that sign appropriately at the allowable size seems an appropriate fit for that proportion of scale. The 107-foot linear facade and how it lines up with the salt box. I even like how the logo is sort of off to the side and leaning on the lower slope of the salt box roof. So I think that was well thought out and well placed. And I do appreciate that the proportion looks better for the grandeur of that facade. But I'm really having a hard time buying off on that large facade, large signage on the back facade. So I'd love to hear if my colleagues had any comments either way.
Who's next? Go, Peter.
Sure. I agree with you, Kendra. I think it's a lovely design. It fits nicely. I'll add for context. I was on the board when we reviewed the previous tenant's building, which is starkly all white. So at the time, I remember having real reservations about so much white on the building. And now my initial reaction to this was, wow, it's all black. I guess I live and learn. The all white in the end seemed okay. I imagine the all black will also seem okay. It's a striking design, and I think it's okay. So again, my reservations are regarding the sign size, and not just the back of the building, Kendra, but the front for me as well. The purpose of the regulations regarding the things fronting El Camino is to make them less visible from El Camino. We're not trying to get signage that you can read from the street, and it's impossible anyway because of the trees. But justifying a large sign because that's what's necessary to be visible from El Camino is, in my book, just doesn't fly. That's the intent of not having a large sign there. And again, I come to the same question as before. I don't know what findings we can make. What is exceptional about this storefront that should allow it to be different than the others to allow a larger sign or a larger logo? I understand when the applicant says that the proportions of their particular sign means that the text is then too small, but that's really a design issue regarding how you design your signs and your logo. It doesn't justify a larger sign and larger exception to that. And so I just don't see the findings to justify the 42-inch logo. I can see that the sign at 2 feet high seems fine, but I can't go beyond that. So that's my only sticking point, is that I can't make the sign exception for this particular logo. Thank you.
Would you like to come? Okay.
Thank you for your application. I do like the elevation design. I think proportionally it really looks good, and the materials, it just looks nice to meet with each other. And I do like the wood siding on front and back side of the building. As to the sign, yeah, I agree with my colleagues whether and suggest the applicant whether you would think to separate the logo sign versus the text so that the logo sign could be smaller to meet the 2 feet requirement instead of 42 inches. And also for the backside, the rear facade, I think it makes sense to make it smaller because it is the width of the building is narrower. And I think it doesn't necessary to be that big. That's all my comments. Thank you.
Hosma?
Sure. Yeah. I remember being slightly disappointed in the sense that like the renderings showed it as like a very mirrory white. And so you just saw trees, right? Because there's just trees on the other side. And you're like, oh, what a cool facade. It's just trees. But it wasn't. It was mainly spandrel. It was, yeah, white. It was like white, like glassy, spandrel-y stuff. So I'll just talk about the signs first. I think for the rear, thank you for doing the renderings, by the way, to show us the compliant as well. I think the rear actually looks really nice with the compliant. It's kind of a more intimate facade. And so I think that one is okay to comply. For the front, you know, I also have a hard time. We have to find some extenuating circumstance to, you know, make an exception for this sign program. And I'm with board member Baltes that I can't really find something extenuating. And he's right that there's going to be trees. If you're going to try and capture the interest of people driving on El Camino, you'll have a bunch of trees blocking your way. And so maybe the big sign wouldn't achieve what you'd want it to anyway. So that said, I don't love the spandrel. Spandrel up close, spandrel from afar maybe is fine because then you're not seeing what happens to it up close. But up close, I just think it's kind of dishonest in some ways. And at nighttime, your silhouette doesn't happen, right? Like you don't get that cool, you know, canted line shape at nighttime because of that. And so I might recommend wood. I don't know if this is a personal thing, but I do think it would make the facade look nicer. And at nighttime also, when you light that, you would get that shape. Whereas with spandrel, it would just kind of, you know, that shape would fall away at nighttime. And then potentially, yeah, I think with the smaller sign, I think maybe a blade sign might make sense because you would be attracting the attention of people walking along that wouldn't be seeing it from afar, that are just on that sidewalk up front. So I would recommend doing a smaller sign, but then adding a blade sign to kind of get people's attention.
Okay, so we've heard some differences here, and I'd add one to that. The larger facade sign facing out is a matter of the proportion of the entire building. And I think making it smaller will really diminish the entire facade. I think the proportion of it is very good relative to the dimension of the facade as it is. And so I agree with Commissioner Rosenberg that the front facade sign is important to keep that size, but the rear is a much tighter, smaller space, and that keeping the same size is a bit out of scale for the interior signage, the one to the rear of the building. And on that one, it could be, according to the regulations. I think there's exceptions in the shopping center, if I understand the own shopping center regulations, that some of the signs that they have are beyond the minimum sign program signage. And this is a larger store. And for this facade, it's important to have the sign in the front relate to the size of the store itself. I think I don't find a problem with the spandrel glass issue. I think that the frame of the glass will be fine and that it picks up the relationship to the side portions of the building and the drama of the irregular whatever. And I think somebody had a description of what that is, and it's a very nice simple geometry, and the wood inside is a very warm and inviting material. The scale of the light fixtures, I think, is going to be very appropriate as well. So I like the facade just the way it is, and would prefer that the only objection I have is the signage within the courtyard and the interior. So, and with that, so there's some difference here. What's the consensus?
I think I could be okay with the front to make the exception. You make a point that it is a big facade, and so maybe there is, I don't know if it's like one of those things where it falls off the chart or something, kind of like last time. I would want to ask my fellow board members what they think about the wood though, because if you look at this rendering here, the nighttime rendering, the two boxes on either side really like pop because you've got that wood in the back, but in the middle, it just falls apart. Like the shape of, the desired shape, the iconic shape, at nighttime falls apart.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think maybe different lighting design might help, because like when you see the two sides, it use the linear lights. And then on the center, instead of spotlight, maybe they can add some LED strip that to enhance the geometry shape. I don't know, that's applicant.
Through the chair, could we ask the applicant if they would be able to address this by modifying that spandrel somehow? Is this an unreasonable request on our part? I think it's a good point, but what does it actually take to change it?
Right. And just for what it's worth, I actually would be on the opposite side of the table. I kind of like the spandrel, and I'm sorry. I think that it's beautiful in the daytime with the glass, and that most people would visit it during the daytime. So my argument would be that at nighttime, it's just not the primary time of usage. So I think that making sure that it's accounted for during the day is a little bit more important. Now, I do like Board Member Chen's idea of some LED strip lighting or something like that to, again, re-emphasize the salt box shapes. I think that could be very interesting. But I do have to disagree with the wood. I think it would just sort of break that salt box shape into something just sort of flat. And actually going to the images that they have of the previously built ones, where it's mostly wood with the glass door in the middle, it's just not as striking as this. So to me, I feel like that would take it and sort of give it a haircut that it doesn't really need. My 2 cents on it.
Yeah, and if there's no support for it, there's no point in pushing it. But I'd prefer to see just all glass to the ceiling and go deep into the building that way.
But it won't be all glass, right? Because it's going to be solid. That's the thing. It's deceptive. Maybe that's why I don't.
Yes, I want to know if they can change the building inside to make it so it goes deeper this
Seems
way.
pretty.
Pull it back 3 feet or something before you put the spandrel dropping down. But I don't know if that's realistic or not. That's why I want to
I
ask.
see somebody shaking
Yeah.
out there.
But I can go either way.
Listen, actually, some very interesting things are happening here on the dais that I think that I tend to agree with the comments that are made about how you light the material that is on that face, and that wood is a very wonderful feeling material and very natural looking, and goes with the purpose of this store, I guess. What you're selling inside should affect in some way symbolically what your facade looks like, and the beautiful simplicity of the shape. But the texture of that wood is really kind of important, so that lighting it is critical. And I don't see your illustrations actually representing what that might be. So some further thought about how you light that area, I think, is a significant suggestion here on from the board?
So, Chair, if I may, I think we have a variety of opinions on this particular project. We also have different parts to this project. We have the facade itself, and then we have a couple different signs. And so maybe if we break this down into its parts and do some straw polls, just to see where the board is as a whole. And then we can, talk to the applicant and see what changes may be possible.
Good suggestion here because we have to sum up. Let's start by let's talk first about the lighting, just because that seems to be a form giver here quite significantly. So I'd like a straw poll that would like to see this lighting improved on the front of the building.
Maybe more specific. What are we talking about regarding the lighting?
Yes. So let's hear some suggestions as to what that might be.
Okay. I suppose the spandrel issue could be addressed with lighting. If you somehow lit it so that at night, the full salt box shape was emphasized or brought out, I think that would address your concern to some degree, right, Osma? Our concern.
No, I think it's a separate thing, actually, because my issue with the spandrel is that this may sound silly, but it's like it looks like glass, and then you get up close and it's deceptive. It's not glass, and you can see it, and it like there's dirt that collects there, and it's kind of it's like a different thing. So I'm sort of, I mean, I think the lighting idea is separate, I think, because that's suggesting we like recommend to the applicant to add.
I'm confused then. On the two rectangular windows, there's some sort of what I would call a spandrel panel. Really, it's a Koya wood finished edge of the drop ceiling. It looks about 2 feet down.
That's right.
And that seems like that would be lit in a way that the whole rectangular glazed opening is expressed. However, on the salt box shape, as we're calling it,
Salt box.
what I'm hearing is that the glazing above the horizontal ceiling is actually, there's no cavity behind that. That's just a finished panel. So it's a surface spandrel panel.
Right. And I guess, yeah, I'm suggesting that is treated similarly.
And so why couldn't that be treated similarly to the side windows? That would make much more sense. Now that I understand that, I think that's actually pretty important.
I think that's the straw poll is.
Fair enough. So then for my colleagues on the board, you have two different treatments on these windows, basically. The rectangular windows have a few inches back, and then there's a wood interior finish, but the glazing is clearly expressed as glazing, whereas the salt box is not.
And maybe this question goes to the applicant, because from my understanding of it, the glazing on the left and the right side sit proud of where that structural element is. And they basically have this dropped header of structure that they're wrapping in the Akoya wood, right? So they've got the space between the glazing and the dropped header to illuminate it, to have sort of some breathing room. And again, if I'm understanding this correctly, the salt box shape, I believe that is more pressed up closer to it. So I'm not sure they have that capacity without potentially moving all that glazing facade out. So maybe that's a question that we could pose to the applicant and better understand what the condition is and why these two things are treated
I
separately.
suppose we could ask it, but it seems to me that they just should do that. I mean, we're architects and this is a building. You're going to spend a bunch of money doing this. You can move things around a little bit. It's not unreasonable, I don't think. But okay, to the chair, Osma's right. That's the question.
I guess I have there's to add to the complexity here, just to imagine if the possibility of extending the shape of the salt box into the building a bit as well as an alternate.
Well, that's what I was saying at first, but
Well,
I think that
keep it up.
there is some sort of structural element going through there.
So Chair, we do have the applicant raising their hands if you'd like them to address these questions.
Yes, I would. I think it's, we're all of different kind of intentions here. So we'd like to hear what your reaction to our dilemma of the facade at this point.
Okay, this is David Levy, DAVID, LE, as in Victor, Y. I just wanted to explain why the facade was developed in the manner that it is. There was a moment frame completely across this building. And underneath that, there's, of course, the original concrete facade that was on the building. And then underneath in this building, there was a complete solid masonry wall dropped down from this concrete spandrel that was there. And that's what created the moment frame for the whole center. The landlord has taken upon themselves, had pulled permits and taken a section of this moment frame out and put in a new moment frame behind the entrance. So that's how we've opened our entrance up. But the existing concrete that's there, and it's across the whole center, it's at the Urban Outfitters, just to the left of our store, it's exposed. That remains and cannot be taken out. So in the windows, you see the wood Akoya, it wraps over those pieces of concrete that are still exposed. And then we were able to put the glass in front of that, similar to what was done at the Jeffrey store originally. So that basically, we cannot take out any more of that frame. They have taken out as much of that moment frame that was there and modified it for us. So we can't open it up anymore. We've gone as far as we can. The reason the spandrel glass was put there instead of wood, we tried the wood. It looked too similar to what we did on a Seattle project, and we weren't happy with the way that was developed. I think Commissioner Rosenberg mentioned that. You're right. It looked like too much wood with glass popped into it as an opening. So we developed this in this manner, knowing that, again, most of the customers would see this store during the daylight hours and nobody's ever, in our opinion, as designers, I don't think anybody's going to recognize that spandrel glass is reflective above the doors. The doors are very tall doors. Somebody who's walking in there is going to be at least 4 to 5 feet below it. Our windows are consistently clean because we like to see into our stores. And actually, I'm convinced that this is a cleaner application than if we put wood above that horizontal monument. So if there's any questions to that I've just stated, please let me know.
Well, yeah, I don't think it's quite clear enough where the line of the ceiling is on the inside. Is it at the line of the spandrel glass at the salt box entry? Where is the ceiling behind the horizontal mullion there in the windows?
It is behind. It is behind the glass. So the glass in the storefront of the two windows is out at the front on the lease line, and then our display area is behind that, and then that concrete facade drops down about 4 feet back from that glass. And that's what we've wrapped with wood.
Is that clear to everybody here?
Is there Andy, do you have a section available?
I would mention that
Garrett, can you pull up the ARB packet? Or do you have that?
So sheet A500?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So it's right there. So this is all spandrel glass here.
This is the spandrel glass from here to here. I don't have a color pen, but it's like from here to here.
So this is the inside. This is the outside. Okay.
So just for clarification, it looks like the two-side rectangular glazing is at the front, basically in line with the black paneling, and the spandrel glass and entry doors are pushed back that 4'8" of the overhang. So that's where that difference seems to be coming in. Now, in theory, you could pull that door and facade and spandrel glass forward even 8 inches and wrap that back portion with wood. I'm going to put that out there. However, I disagree with that. So just saying that there is a possibility for getting the wood in there. My opinion is I like the way it is. So.
That clarifies the somewhat better, the section through the facade.
Yeah, I have to admit, now that I'm understanding this better, I'm concerned that the side windows are flush with the black. I thought they were deeply recessed into the facade. And I don't think it's as good. I think there should be more of a physical reveal in the building there.
To gently argue back with that, I think that if you do push those pieces of glazing back, you might almost accentuate them in a way that would make them look like entrances. I think having them be proud and at the front, it's very clearly, it's a window. It's not a space to walk into. And I think for me, I like that difference between glass at the front, like a window, and then recessed portion for the entrance, right? It draws you in. And I would worry that if we push those glazing elements back on the sides, someone might turn and walk into a window, right? Just because there's that moment of, oh, do I go in here?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think having the entry inset makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
And I agree with that as well.
Yeah, I think you need some physical reveal there. It doesn't have to be enough that you mistake it for a door, but to me, with this solid black facade, the intent is to really be dramatic with that. And so openings of any kind, be they physical doorways or windows, should all be expressed physically as it punctured through this heavy wall. And when you make it dead flush, you really don't achieve that. So to me, that's just a fundamental design thing, that there should be a 6-inch or 12-inch recess back.
So we don't have a recess, but we do have a frame around each of the outer display windows. So there's a 6-inch frame that goes all the way up and around to break that up from the ACM panels.
Yeah, well, I saw I've noticed even there's a detail of that. I appreciate very much the construction details of that.
We can also add that those two display windows are just like they were at the Jeffries, the previous store. They're exact same plane as they were before. The only difference was Jeffries had a masonry wall behind them, and through the work that the landlord has done for us by putting in the moment frame, we were able to open those windows up so somebody could see into the store.
Yeah, I understand all that. I still think it'd be a stronger design if it were back even 6 inches, the depth of your trim detail. I don't think any of this is going to affect my ability to think the facade is acceptable for our standards. So I guess it depends what my colleagues think. But the bigger issue I think we have is the sign, really. But don't misunderstand this. I think all this is a strong design any which way. And we're a bunch of architects and love to dive into these details. So, but my opinion to my colleagues is that it would be stronger to have the side windows back 6 inches or something. And I think the spandrel is not as good as just pulling it forward a little bit. Through the chair, maybe we could have them pull up the photo of the storefront in Seattle where they did it differently, and we can take another look at that. David, is that okay?
Of course, if you want.
Is that to the applicant? Is it possible to pull up? You showed a series of your other. So the upper left corner on this screen is what you're talking about? That's a different situation.
It would sort of kind of be like this, except without the sides, right?
Yeah. Part of this was because the existing building had limited structural capacity to entertain windows all the way across. We would have preferred to have a situation like what we're showing for Palo Alto, but due to lead times, agreements with the landlord, and shortened time frame for glazing due to the pandemic, we were limited to this opening.
Small comment I'm also going to add, I do appreciate the Palo Alto placement of the sign in relation to the salt box slope of the roof versus this one. I think it's more successful at Palo Alto.
Agreed.
Okay.
So let's see how we take a vote on this.
Yeah, let's do a straw poll.
So why don't we separate out the sign issue from the salt box and the side window and take a straw poll and see if we could find that acceptable? Who would like to start the vote here?
Is this just for the front facade sign? Are we going to do the front facade sign differently from the rear facade?
Yes, I think we'll do the signs separately,
Okay.
both of them.
So should we start with the front or the rear?
Just start with the front facade itself without the sign.
Okay, so wait.
Yes, yeah, we should do a straw poll on the front facade itself, not including the sign.
Not including the sign.
So I'll say that I'm okay leaving the facade as it is now, or as the designers choose to modify it based on our comments. I don't want to put our fingerprint on it any more than we already have. So
Okay,
I'm happy to let them run with it as
Okay.
presented or slightly modified.
okay, leave it to them.
I would be in agreement with that. I like the facade as it is. I would also just like to note, I would be very distressed if the lights change significantly. So we don't have a spec sheet on what these lighting fixtures are. And I would strongly encourage adhering as closely as possible to the renderings.
Yeah, agree, and agree that there's no big change. Rethink about the lighting design to enhance the geometry shape at the entrance.
Okay. Seems like I'm in the minority here, which is fine. Yeah, I do think it would be good for the applicant to consider it, but I could still approve it if it was unchanged.
I'll support you, Osmo, if you have a concrete idea, but
I mean, we've fleshed it out. It's okay.
they got all these structural things and we don't really know what.
We don't know the details. Yeah. Okay.
So, yes, I'm sort of in agreement here that the front facade shape is very nice and we should keep that. And I think that the designers certainly have identified how well they complete every other project that they've shown us here as well. So I have a great deal of trust that this will look beautiful when it's finished. So I think that straw poll is complete, but now let's get on with the signs. So there are two signs, and the one in the front is one size and the one in the back is the same size. And let's have some straw poll discussion about that. Who would like to start?
Why don't we make it easy? I think the one in the back should be compliant. Just has to be smaller.
I would agree.
I would agree.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree.
Okay, for the one in the front, I understand your argument, David, about it being proportional to the building, and I agree with that. What findings would you suggest we use to justify the decision?
Well, I think using the shopping centers,
If I may, this is a similar situation to the medical center that we just talked about. They are not in conformance with their master sign program. However, they are in conformance with the sign code and with the El Camino guidelines.
there you go. There's enough of a rule in that, I think, to be able to accept that front proportions.
If you'll humor me, Jody, could you tell me if this is a sign exception, and aren't those three findings in the code what we have to find? If this is just an exception to the Stanford Shopping Center guidelines, do they have a different procedure for that then? To my colleagues, what I'm concerned is that this opens the door for every tenant on the shopping center facing El Camino to use the same justification. And if everybody had a 42-inch logo or sign, that would be too much.
Absolutely. And I think that's a really valid concern and definitely this shouldn't be taken lightly, which is why I think this conversation is so important. Now, the one other thing I would say is that when you're looking at the facade, especially on that row, this is the longest facade by far. I mean, Pinkberry is what, 30, 40 feet wide. Most of them are a much smaller space, but yes, we do have to have a valid argument and reason and finding for allowing this exception. So let's find it.
Thank you, Board Member Rosenberg gave my answer.
Do you think you could pull up what you were sharing just a second ago?
So I'm sorry, Jody, did you find specific language that you wanted to share?
No, unfortunately, no, I'm not finding sign exception findings. We normally have those drafted up. We do have the ARB findings. We haven't done sign exception findings for this particular one. But as Board Member Rosenberg was saying, and Board Member Balte, I mean, we do need to be careful that we certainly are setting a precedent. But I do think this is one of the larger facades on this portion of the building. So I think there are some justifications that can be made.
When I read the sign exception findings, I'm just pulling it from the previous project, but that's straight out of our code. Finding number 1 is there are exceptional or extraordinary circumstances or conditions applicable to the property involved that do not apply generally to property in the same district. So what are those exceptional or extraordinary circumstances? What I'm
I
hearing
think
is
in
it's
this,
'cause
yeah, in this
107 feet
particular
long.
case, you'd be talking about like between tenant to tenant, what are the differences versus, property to property.
So the exceptional circumstance is that it's a longer facade?
Yes.
So if somebody has a facade twice as long as this, they can get twice as large a sign again? I mean, there's a reason we have these things in our code with limits, caps to them.
Agreed, but if we also just even looking at sheet A300, this in theory could be 3 completely separate projects, right? This could be 3 separate tenants with 3 notable signs. And instead, they're not doing a blade sign. They're not doing anything extraneous. They're really just trying to do one sign that speaks to the entire facade, which design-wise, I appreciate. Now, could it be shrunk down maybe just a little bit more? Maybe, but right now they're really showing this at a 3'6" for just the round portion. And it's really only 2 feet tall for the text.
Yeah.
So I do want to point that out, that the exception really almost is only applicable to that goat logo. And it's a circle, right? It's not a square. It's not a big rectangle. It's sort of as small of a shape as humanly possible to be. So I really, my thinking on this is that because it is such a long facade, and instead of having 3 separate tenants with 3 separate signs that are all reading that way, this is one simplified design. It covers the entire span in this one very simple shape. And again, I sort of appreciate that they're not doing a blade sign and trying to clutter up the facade.
Yeah, yeah, agree with what Board Member Rosenberger just said. Actually, I would strongly suggest the applicant to rethink about separate the logo, the round shape, and the text, because proportionally, when we look at the front elevation, it seems like the text part it looks good to be 2 foot high, but it's just the round shape. It exceeds the requirements. So I'm not sure if there's the impaired branding thing, you need to be proportionally always the same, or actually the round one could be smaller.
Could I speak to that for a second? Because it seems to me that if you looked at the logo on the frontispiece here, you see a separation. Whereas if you're looking at the image of the building, it looks closer because of the perspective angle of the way in which the front facade is seen. I think the proportion at the front of the page here seems rather good in separation. The very front page.
So did we actually finish our straw poll for the front sign?
No,
we're
I
still
think
talking
we
about
went
it.
into, I got
Jody, I
some,
think it's not so easy because it really hinges on what findings we can or can't make. And that's what I think we're struggling with.
True.
Is what would those findings be? So
I'm also having a hard time making the findings. I mean, I agree that it kind of works proportionally. I mean, I wonder if there's like an in-between,
well, and we had talked to the applicant about, you could keep the letters the size that they are, which is the 2 feet, and you could just minimize the logo. But at least from my, untrained eye, a little bit trained, it looked awkward. I mean, it does seem like it has a good proportion with the logo being larger. So that's, the big reason why we did bring this to the board, because at least at a staff level, we were feeling like it was sort of in proportion with the length of the facade and those sorts of things.
So let's see if we could wind it up. Maybe we could get a vote on this one now.
yeah.
There
we
is
should
also the concept, where was this? I just read this. There was a stacked sign that could be taller. Stacked signs not to exceed 36 inches. So in theory, if you look at the logo itself, it's a stacked sign and it's circular and it's not more than 36 inches. I mean, I think it's 3'6" in this. So it'd be a very minor exception if we view it that way. If this is a stacked one, we're only asking for a 6-inch exception and it is a circular logo.
So maybe there's an answer, Jody. Could we?
And that is true. The stacked sign, some companies have kind of two lines of lettering. And so that's what's meant by the stacked sign. But potentially you could use the 36 inches as a limiter for the logo.
And would that be acceptable to the applicant?
Maybe that's an in-between.
That's
That's
a
not,
compromise.
it's not taking him down to 24, but
Right.
taking him down to 36.
From 3'6" down to 36.
Is that something?
Can we ask the applicant?
Chair, do we?
Let's ask the applicant. Would that be acceptable?
David, I'll let you speak to that. Part of the
Yeah,
issue of,
that's. Go ahead.
let me go real quick. Just one of the things that we're trying to do is, Backcountry's hitting new markets all over the place. They've only been an online retailer until about a year and a half ago. One of the things that you see in all of their marketing communications, their daily email blasts, the packages that are sent to you in the mail, the logo lockup is always shown like that. And right now we're really trying to build brand recognition. And I think if you just put up the word Backcountry, people don't really know what that is. But when they see it in conjunction to that, they're like, oh, that's the online retailer. And I've dealt with this in talking to friends and family that are maybe familiar with the brand and said, oh, I didn't know that they were doing retail stores now. So I think that's the most important thing from a branding perspective for us, is to keep those two things together rather than having just the word.
Yeah, I don't think we're suggesting separating them. It's really just suggesting making it all smaller by 6 inches.
Right. And I would say that actually double checking this, the text portion that's noted as 2 feet actually ignores that drop down of the Y, for what that's worth. So I think taking this entire logo and word Backcountry and shrinking it just a little bit so that the exterior of that circle measures 36 inches, I think we could all go home happy today.
Provided staff puts in the report that this is considered a stacked sign because there's 2 elements that are not aligned. Therefore, 36 inches works. Look, otherwise I can't support it. I think I'm just going to have to stand that. I don't think this is where you make an exception.
Well,
Yeah, I don't know that staff could call it a stacked sign because that's literally, meant to be sort of 2 words on top of each other. But I think we could certainly support that it's, if this company had a longer title, David, if this
Yes.
company had, can you mute, please? If this company had a longer title, they would be allowed the 36 inches. And so I think we're just, as far as setting a precedent, that's a very reasonable precedent to set.
I give the owner one last chance to respond to this comment.
The only concerns I think we're going to have is that we're going to have to present this to Backcountry for their approval. This is I do nothing but retail work, and every logo and word mark is sacred, right? So the scale and proportion of all the items and all the elements in that logo are sacred to the company. So I think we need to study the sign to see how it looks on that facade. So I guess I would ask, is it possible to get approval on our facade, possibly the sign in the back, and then we re-present to you after we do a study of how that sign looks at that scale and proportion on the storefront?
I don't see why not. But in the back, we were already, are you assuming then that you will reduce the one in the back?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So why don't we just say that you're going to represent the sign, bring it back to us as a board?
So we would
Please.
do a-
Signage, period.
so we would do a motion to a date uncertain in that way.
Yeah, we would.
Is this something we could do as an ad hoc committee? I mean, I feel like bringing it back for a whole nother presentation, a whole nother round seems a little bit.
Well, let's
Extra.
take a
I think-
straw poll on that.
Yeah, I think the board as a whole does need to think through or vote on what size they can make findings for. So maybe if the board as a whole agrees that, 36 inches is the right size, then you could send the details to an ad hoc committee or maybe even to staff at that point. But if there's not an agreement on that size, then I think we need to come back to the whole board.
Would someone like to make that as a motion?
Well, the only thing I'll mention is that it sounds like the applicant wants to study that and that there might be, like, what if they study it and for whatever reason, they're not okay with it? Does the approval fall flat in that way?
I think you could say 36 inches, and if they want to do something different, they can still come back to the board with something different, but at least they have that 36 inches basically approved.
So,
We could accept that, we could accept that, please. That'd be great.
okay, then,
Yeah, I'd like to move strongly that we make a decision and move forward, let them go forward. They were coming to us with different sizes of the signs as a whole. They can proportionally enlarge or shrink this, obviously. If we just say 36 inches maximum, they can proportionally change it as they like and staff can check that easily. So I move that we recommend approval of this project as presented with two conditions. One being that the front signage be no larger than 36 inches tall. Secondly, that the light fixtures be clearly documented in the drawings to represent what's shown on the plans now. The rear sign also needs to be reduced to be code compliant, to 24 inches maximum.
I'll second.
vote?
Vice Chair Baltai,
Yes,
Board Member Chen,
Yes.
Chair Hirsch,
Yes.
Board Member Rosenberg,
Yes.
Board Member Thompson,
Yes.
motion carries 5-0.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
That finishes action items. So now we have minutes.
So
Tab, the first one, I think, is
July 7th,
tab.
I move that we approve the minutes for July 7th.
I'll second.
Who was the second?
Before
I
we-
second that.
Looks like Vice Chair Balte has something to speak to.
I'd like to comment on that just quickly. I don't know if it was the July 7th or the July 21st meeting where there was also an ad hoc committee meeting for. Castile.
21st.
It was the 21st? Okay, so I'll bring it up at the 21st then. No comment for this one.
Okay, so then
Should we do a vote?
the next one. is-
Wait, I think we need to vote first.
Oh, take a vote.
Vice Chair Baltai,
Yeah.
Board Member Chen, Chair Hirsch,
Yes.
Board Member Rosenberg,
Yes.
Board Member Thompson,
Yes, and Vice Chair, or sorry, Board Member Chen's microphone stopped working. Oh, there it
Oh,
is.
yeah, it works now. Yeah, we'll do, yes.
There's
Thank
another
you.
one too.
I have 5 yeses, motion carries 5-0.
Meeting date,
For July
July
7th.
20, huh?
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
July 21st?
So I'd like to make I don't know how to put this up. For the July 21st meeting, my understanding is that there was an ad hoc meeting for Castilleja School after that. That was a rather involved meeting involving a site visit and, as I understand it, some discussion. And I really think that should be included in the minutes for the record. So I don't think we should approve this until some record of what was covered at the ad hoc meeting is included.
Jody, where is there's supposed to be a write-up on that?
Yes, I believe staff is in process of doing that write-up. And so if you want to continue this item, that would be fine.
Yep, let's continue it.
So I'll move that we continue this to a date uncertain.
I'll
Vote on
second that.
Okay.
Vice Chair Baltai,
Yes.
Board Member Chan,
Yes.
Chair Hirsch,
Yes,
Board Member.
guess that's it for minutes. We have some subcommittee items coming up.
Yes, and I was going to do announcements.
I have an announcement as well. Can I go first? Okay, so our ARB Awards Ceremony is set for September 21st. Everybody should have received an Evite. There is also, if you haven't received an Evite, this is, make sure you RSVP. Please RSVP. Contact me if you have any questions. Kendra and myself are on the subcommittee, and we're ferociously working towards making that a really good event.
And for what it's worth, we do have some examples of the potential award certificates. So if you guys want to see it, I've printed those out, and literally just put a check mark on the one that you like the best, and that could be an informal way of voting on them.
So I have a question for you now. Have you contacted the person who sets up the board in the lobby here?
Yes, we've been in contact with, I think her name is Leslie. So the boards, we've requested physical boards from the winners. Those will be presented on the night, and then those boards will also be there in the lobby. We're going to decide after this meeting where exactly in the lobby they're going, but they're going to be there for the duration of a month, in addition to having all of the winners' sort of 3 key images circulating for the month as well. So it'll be a great way of celebrating these projects publicly for a month in City Hall.
Okay. And have you received responses? In particular, there's one that the Roxy Wrap project, right? And the architect for that. Have they been contacted, and are they going to present something for us as well?
So all winners were sent an email yesterday. And so I think all of the materials are due next week. And
I believe we have some type of confirmation from everybody so far that they have understood that they have received an award, right? I don't believe that there's anyone that's just a no response at this point.
Yeah, I think we've received responses from everyone. So, yeah. Hope people can make it.
Okay, so.
Thank you, Osmo and Kendra. This is great.
Yes, thank you. Yes, we got your write-up, and it's very detailed.
Oh, the other thing is for the rest of the board members, we also have to do a write-up for each project. And yes, we have homework. The winners are doing
Still
their
to
part.
do.
We have to do our part. So the winners are giving us a little narrative of the project. We have project descriptions. And so each of us has a project assigned to us, sometimes more than one. And so we just have to make sure that we do our write-up also by next week.
So each one of us is going to speak to the 2 projects or that
Actually, sorry,
we.
not by
Okay.
next week, the following week, because we're getting their write-ups next week. So we need to use that in
Okay.
our response. it'll be the
So
following week.
we will introduce we individually will introduce each of those projects that we've
Correct.
been assigned to.
Yeah, so we have an agenda set up for that night. Kendra and I will be hosting, and then we will be asking each of the board members to introduce the project for everybody.
And it's just a brief introduction, correct? It's not like a long
Of course.
paragraph because they have their own things that they're going to.
Talk
It's
about.
going to be sort of the reasons why we picked them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But are we putting a 2 or 3 minute limit on that?
of course.
1 minute max.
Peter says 1 minute.
Good try. Good
Yeah,
try.
so it's just an intro because I think as board member Rosenberg was saying that, the architect will have their own spiel.
Yeah, okay. But we
So-
should have a little fun thing in the beginning, certainly. Yeah?
Yeah,
So
but
the-
definitely we want to say why they got an award, so.
Okay.
Each of the board member will briefly introduce their own project, and then the winner will then give a short presentation, or
No,
how it
it'll be
works?
like an acceptance speech, like Academy Awards. Thank the Academy. And
Is there a
I'm gonna have some playoff music queued and ready to go, and have a time
Oh,
limit.
when they go too long, that's perfect.
How about dress and stuff, you know?
Dress nicely, yes.
Maybe like a drum roll, introducing Ken Hayes.
Is this cocktail or
Tell
black
'em, get
tie?
ready.
I think it's cocktail. Although I'll just say you can never be too overdressed.
Red ties. Oh, no.
If we say ball gowns, let me know.
All right. I thank you. And I appreciate everyone working on the ARB Awards, Amy French included, especially while I was out on vacation. So thank you. I did have some updates from the council meetings that were requested. And so I just have, I'm borrowing Claire Raybould's presentations that she did to the council the other night. So this was from Monday, the 15th. So we do have 800 San Antonio, which is a pre-screening that was heard by the council on Monday. She just went through, what is a pre-screening. We've got this particular project is proposing to go from CS to PHZ to have 75 condo units that would replace retail and retail-like. And they were also merging two lots there. You can see there would be, with the PHZs, we want to make sure that there's a balance between the housing and the jobs. And so we're saying here that there's a net increase in housing and no jobs generation. They would include the 20% affordable, which is council's sort of entry fee into the PHZ process. They are proposing a 60-foot height limit, a fairly large FAR at 2.9. And also, extra lot coverage and density and things of that nature. I believe the mayor, as part of this discussion, I think the council as a whole generally felt fairly good about this project. But the mayor did have some questions about, this is a large increase in FAR, and therefore, does there need to be a higher percentage of affordability or some other, amenity added to this project, given the large request. So that was something that council brought up, but in general, they were in favor of the project. So let me move on to the next council item. This is also Claire Raybould's. This is 616 Ramona, and actually this is Ken Hayes is the architect for this, was a pre-screening. And I think the biggest request here was that council, let me get down to the building envelope. Claire gave a good history of, building envelope and how it's been interpreted by the council. For a long time, we were a lot looser with that verbiage, but around about 2016, council let staff know that building envelope, now we call it shrink wrap. So if you have an existing building, you can certainly replace it, but we put this sort of shrink wrap around it, and you need to build the new building within that same sort of shape and size. Some of that came out of the University Arts building. There was a request to take some basement square footage and put it up on an upper floor. And that was not seen as acceptable. And that's where we got this latest definition of building envelope from the council. And so this is a project that, in order to modernize the structure, there's some desire to go outside of that building envelope. I think the council was not 100% in favor of this, but I think there's some more discussions to be had. So those were the main items. Let's see, I believe there might have been a third item if I can click on it. Oops, sorry. home key was the other item that was heard by council. It wasn't the design or any of that. It was more the execution of agreements and things. But just so the ARB knows that, home key is going forward fast and furious. There will, in the near future, be an ARB hearing for that project design. So thank you.
Haven't we already had a
Yes,
review of
thank you
home
very
key?
much. Thank you very much. I'm trying to put things together on the fly. Yes, the ARB is already, so staff's working on home key a lot. But yes, the ARB has already reviewed the design. And so we're working on finishing approvals, but we haven't finished the architecture review. So I'm going to get back to you. Emily's working on that project and make sure exactly where we are. But we have 2 items on file. We have the green waste site and the actual home key buildings. And so I believe we might have done a prelim for it. I don't know that we've done the formal. So I believe that's what's currently on file, but I'll get back to you. Thank you.
Well, I think we could wrap it up. You want to start wrapping it up? You. Somebody
Wrap up what?
the meeting. Here.
Okay, thank you, David. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.